Hello everyone, I am Laethas and welcome back to another video, and today I have another Should You Buy, this time for the series World Trigger by Daisuke Ashihara. Now this video was requested by me of Apollo Gray. You may know him, you probably know him. He's another manga tuber on the channel. He recently picked this up and he wanted a second opinion on the series, mainly because it's a shonen battle series, and through these years he has fallen out of favor with a lot of them. So he wants a second opinion on this one because he's thinking of giving it a go, and so here this video is. Now, to start off with, what I'm going to say is that you should, or if you haven't gotten into this series before, haven't purchased any of the volumes, haven't read any of the volumes, then what I'm going to recommend is that you go watch the anime first, because it branches off from the manga at some point, but it also covers at least the first, I want to say 6, potentially first 8, maybe more volumes before it branches off. So I would recommend watching the anime because it is most likely going to be cheaper for you and is going to be easier to sort of get a feel for what the series is about. And so that is going to be like my main recommendation here. But if you've done that, or you just really like manga and you don't really like watching anime, then the rest of this video is going to be more about the manga itself. Now, as a quick synopsis, basically, there was a point in time where aliens sort of invaded this sort of city. Then a entity was created called Border. They fought off the aliens, and they've limited a lot of the alien attacks to sort of small areas now, and so the border agency exists to sort of keep those to a minimum and to sort of fight off the aliens. And our main character, who is not the character on this cover, he's this character right here in this orange cell, if you can see. He is our main character, like our main character, and he's also a main character, but he falls second to him because this is what the story is mainly about, I would say. Now, also to start off with, this series is released by Viz Media, as you can see right there, and it is under their Shonen Jump imprint. So each of these volumes is going to run you $10 US retail, which is as cheap as manga comes new. Now, of course, if you're buying online, buying used, then it'll probably be cheaper. Just know that the retail price for these volumes is $10. And sort of one thing that you really need to know before getting into this series is that our main character is very weak for a large part of the series. Now, for some of you, this is going to be a large negative, but for me personally, it isn't that bad. It is somewhat annoying, but it isn't as bad as some other shonen series tropes. It's kind of different in the sense that our main character isn't overpowered. Instead, we have this character who is sort of the more overpowered and stronger character, sort of when he starts. Now, what ends up happening is he sort of diminishes his own power willingly to sort of, I'm not going to spoil it, but he diminishes his own power for his own reasons, and he starts to build himself back up in sort of a different way. Another thing to note about this series is that it is a very different take on sort of shonen battle action, so that is a definite plus. Instead of being sort of very one-dimensional, the character with the highest power level will win for the most part, unless there's like team fighting involved, but for the most part, shonen battle is character with the higher power level wins. This series is a lot more tactical and a lot more cyclical and counter-based than just be stronger than your opponent. You have to outthink your opponent, you have to out-strategize your opponent in order to sort of win in these battles. Different sorts of powers are more effective against certain types of enemies, and different types of powers have their own little quirks that go along with them that allow you to do certain things. Again, there are certain powers that are like inherent to the user, and then there are certain powers that are available to everyone to use, sort of as like a utility, like a different weapon like a sword or a spear, stuff like that. So it's not like Nen in Hunter x Hunter, that's very, very complicated, but it's sort of in that same vein of you should use this weapon to counter that sort of strategy or play style, and because of the environment being sort of rainy, you might want to do this instead of doing that to sort of get an edge on your opponent. Another thing to note about this series is that there is a tournament arc. I'm not sure if it's covered in the anime, and it's not covered in the manga till very late. Well, I wouldn't say late, but not for a while. And the tournament arc is different in the sense that we don't have one-on-ones, we have 3v3 teams. So you get a lot more strategy and a lot more tactics that go into these tournaments, and this is where the main character starts to shine, because as it would turn out, he's actually a decent strategist and sort of knows his members of his team, their strengths, their weaknesses, and what they should be doing in order to assure his squad sort of a victory. So it is very unique in that aspect. I don't think, or not to my knowledge or memory, well, there probably is one that exists, but I can't think of one off the top of my head, where the main tournament arc focuses primarily on team battles instead of 1v1. So if you're looking for something new in Shonen Battle, then this will do it in that tournament arc. That said, it doesn't come till later, so you will have to get through some volumes. Another thing to note is that those volumes that you are getting through is somewhat different than what you are probably used to in Shonen Battle. You do have some training going on, but our characters are different enough in their sort of fighting styles, in the way they sort of do business, I guess, that you do get some very interesting interactions and ways that the characters fight and team up with one another in order to sort of fight off the aliens. So that's interesting. One negative I will note is that there are moments that feel very, very anime, very, very archetypical, very, very sort of generic or cliche. So I'm not necessarily sure if that's a bad thing, just because I can't think of very many series where those don't exist. So I've kind of come to the conclusion that you just kind of have to deal with it. Now, in this series, it isn't as grand or as pervasive as in other series, so it's kept sort of to a lower degree in this series than most, I would say, which is a good thing. And I've not gotten into any of the artwork yet, but yeah, it's decent. It's not the best artwork out there. It definitely looks modern. It's not fantastic, but it's not bad either. It's definitely decent. The paneling is pretty decent, so it's pretty easy to follow sort of what's going on in the story. So that's good. It's always nice to see a series with good paneling, because it's not really a skill that you typically pick up on unless you notice either bad paneling or really good paneling, because when panels are bad, it's not fun to read. But this series, it's pretty good at that. The density of the series, or dialogue per page, I guess, is fairly average. You don't get a whole lot of dialogue per page, but it's not like nothing for most pages, except for some action scenes. So this will probably take you the standard amount of time that it takes you to read a volume or read a chapter in this series. And the last thing that I sort of want to note is that this series is currently on hiatus in Japan at 18 volumes, and currently 17 volumes have been released in English, with the 18th volume coming out January 2018. So we've almost caught up with the Japanese release, and at that point, no new volumes will be coming out until the series gets off hiatus, which I haven't really looked all that much into this author's particular reason for being on hiatus, so I'm not sure how long that could be. But you just keep that in mind, that this is an unfinished series and it is also on hiatus. I should also note that I'm not sure exactly how far into the series that I've read, but I have not read it through all the volumes that are currently out. I've read, I want to say, between the first, I want to say like around 10, maybe 12 volumes of the series. Because I read it a while ago and I've seen the anime. But, yeah, basically what I'm going to leave you on is that if you can watch anime or are willing to watch anime, that is what I would do with this series before you decide to purchase any of the manga volumes, just to sort of get an idea of what the series is about. Do note that, as I've said, it diverges at some point, so you might want to look up where it sort of diverges, because maybe you want to drop the anime once that takes place, or you don't want, like, the bad anime ending, if it has one, because I haven't seen the whole anime, to sort of ruin your idea of what the manga could be. But my opinion of the series is that it's a very interesting shonen battle series. The main sort of drawback or negative is that our main character is very weak for a lot of the series. That's not as big of a turnoff for me, but for some of you that might be. Big plus, non-one-dimensional fighting style. It's not like a Dragon Ball Z or most other sort of shonen battle series where the strongest fighter or the fighter with the highest power level wins. There's more strategy and more tactics involved in this series, which is nice to see. And so yeah, those are sort of the two big points that you should know, aside from the price being as cheap as manga gets at 10 a volume. But yeah, that will do it for this Should You Buy episode on World Trigger. If you want sort of a more nuanced, or you have a more nuanced question to ask, leave that in the comments down below, and I will try and answer it to the best of my ability. If there's a series in my collection that you would like or are thinking of picking up, you want a little bit more information on it, leave that down below, and I might do a Should You Buy on it in the future. If you have any other random or related questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the comments as well. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and share. And if you'd like to keep up to date with all of my content, you can hit that subscribe button. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I am Laethas. Goodbye.